Remembering that it's been mooted that every character and every element of every story is an aspect of our self, of our psyche. In a place far away, in a time not so long ago, there was a very, very rich merchant. Not only was he a very successful merchant, but he owned several farms, successful farms, and he owned several tracts of very verdant forest. Now, this merchant had an only daughter who he loved very dearly, and it came for the time for her to be married. So, being a man of faith and a good man, he sought for a suitable husband for his beloved daughter. He searched far and wide, and he finally found a young man who spent his days in the house of learning, studying the sacred books which he knew by heart. Now, when the day of the wedding came, this young man presented himself at the wedding venue. He had never met his father-in-law to be, nor his bride to be. But when the wedding was over and the veil was lifted, the young man and his bride immediately knew that they were meant to be together, and they began a loving, a deep relationship. Now the young man took up residence in the merchant's palatial residence. But it was noticed that every day he went out and got on his horse and rode off into the distance, and no one knew where or what he was doing. But he was a loving and devoted husband, so the merchant went about living his very, very, very happy life with all the trappings that wealth can bring and that faith brings for us. But it so happened that this merchant had placed a hut in front of both of the forests, where he put a keeper, so that it was seen that no one came in to poach the animals of those forests, and that they were taken care of. But every day, one of the men who lived in the huts and was a keeper of the forest noticed the young man riding by on his horse. So he decided to follow him, to see what he was about. And when he did, there was an occasion where he saw the young man alight from his horse and go in to bathe in a pool that was rancid and smelly. But the keeper noticed that when the young man came out of the pond water became pure. It was so pure he could go and drink from it the sweet water that remained. He followed this young man and found miracles occurring, trees that were barren giving fruit, and many other wondrous miracles he was able to observe. Now he went home and told his wife about this, and his wife said, "Oh, please, we are childless. We have been able to have a child. Please ask him. He is one of the hidden ones. So the keeper, the very next day, followed the young man into the forest and accosted him and said, I've been following you and I've witnessed what you're able to do. The young man said, oh, you found my secret. The keeper told him his story and said, please, I beg you, will you help us? And the young man said, go to your home, and within the year your wife will give birth to a son. And this exactly happened. Now, as it happened, the two keepers of the forest would often meet to share stories. And the second keeper said to the first keeper, oh, I noticed now that you have a child when you'd been barren for so many years. What happened? Tell me. But the first keeper had sworn himself to secrecy with the young man, so he could not tell what it was that was happened. But the second keeper told him his very tragic story. He had had 3 sons, and each of them had died at birth. Please, please, will you help me? How was it that you were able to have a child after all those years? Well, the first keeper, of course, sworn to secrecy, said, I cannot tell you, but let's exchange our places. You come to my cabin and I'll go to your cabin. And so this is what happened. And the second keeper went to the first keeper's cabin. And sure enough, he too observed the young man riding into the forest each day. So he too followed him and found the secret that had been kept by the first keeper. And accosting the young man, he begged, please, won't you help me? I have had 3 sons and they have all died at birth. So the young man looked at the second keeper quietly for a moment, and he said, do you remember many years ago, before you yourself was wed, you went to the river, and on the edge of the river there was a tree, and its roots formed a hand. So jokingly you took off your ring and placed it on the finger of the hand at the bottom of the tree, and at that time you wedded the spirit of that tree. And since you wed another, the spirit of the tree was jealous, so took away your sons. You must divorce this spirit. And taking out a piece of paper from his pocket, the young man wrote on it a divorce decree. He said, take this to the tree. And so the second keeper did as he was told, weeping, because he said to the young man, yes, I remember that, but I put it out of my mind. But he went to the tree and placed the divorce decree beneath it. After this, his wife gave birth to sons who grew and grew to manhood. To these keepers, this young man was a hidden tzaddik according to the faith of their day. But what is this young man for us? What does this young man represent for us? What's the deep meaning of this story for you? Remembering that all its characters are part of us. What is the deep meaning of this story? What is this young man represent for us? To those of that faith and that time, he was a hidden tzaddik. What is he for us?